Santa called to make sure I'm prepared. He said winter love is spreading everywhere. Summer came and took off with the spring. So now we start the Christmas caroling. I'll find my way back home and light up every tree. We will hang our stockings for you and one for me. 'Cause Santa called to make sure I'm prepared. He said pack your bags and tell them you'll be there. I'll be home with my love this Christmas. I promise I'll be home with my love this Christmas. I promise I'll be home. I'll be home. I'll be home. I'll be home. Santa called to make sure I'm prepared. He said wrap the gifts with all your love and care. The wind it blows the snow up in the sky, but I won't let the wind delay my flight. I'll be home with my love this Christmas. I promise I'll be home with my love this Christmas. I promise I'll be home. I'll be home. I'll be home. I promise I'll be home. I'll be home. Santa called to make sure I'm prepared. He said pack your bags and tell them you'll be there. I'll be home with my love this Christmas. I promise I'll be home with my love this Christmas. I promise I'll be home. I'll be home. I'll be home. I promise I'll be home. I'll be home. I'll be home. I promise I'll be home.
Hello, and welcome to the Holly Jolly Very COVID Christmas Extravaganza. Thank you for watching. Grab a cup of hot chocolate, find a comfy seat in your living room, and enjoy the show. The first story I'm going to tell you tonight is one of my favorite Christmas stories of all time. It's called A Visit from St. Nicholas. 'Twas the night before Christmas, when all through the house not a creature was stirring, not even a mouse. The stockings were hung by the chimney with care, in hopes that St. Nicholas soon would be there. The children were nestled all snug in their beds, while visions of sugar plums danced in their heads. And Mamma in her kerchief and I in my cap had just settled our brains for a long winter's nap. When out on the lawn there arose such a clatter, I sprang from my chair to see what was the matter. Away to the window I flew like a flash, tore open the shutters, and threw up the sash. The moon on the breast of the new-fallen snow gave a luster of midday to objects below, when what to my wondering eyes did appear but a miniature sleigh and 8 tiny reindeer. With a little old driver so lively and quick, I knew in a moment it must be St. Nick. More rapid than eagles, his coursers they came, and he whistled and shouted and called them by name.
Now Dasher, now Dancer, now Prancer and Vixen, on Comet, on Cupid, on Donner and Blitzen. To the top of the porch, to the top of the wall. Now dash away, dash away, dash away all.
As leaves that before the wild hurricane fly, when they meet with an obstacle, mount to the sky. So up to the housetop his coursers they flew, with a sleigh full of toys, and St. Nicholas too. And then in a twinkling I heard on the roof the prancing and pawing of each little hoof. As I drew in my head and was turning around, down the chimney St. Nicholas came with a bound. He was dressed all in fur from his head to his foot, and his clothes were all tarnished with ashes and soot. A bundle of toys he had flung on his back, and he looked like a peddler just opening his pack. His eyes, how they twinkled, his dimples how merry, his cheeks were like roses, his nose like a cherry. His droll little mouth was drawn up like a bow, and the beard on his chin was as white as the snow. The stump of a pipe he held tight in his teeth, and the smoke encircled his head like a wreath. He had a broad face and a little round belly that shook when he laughed, like a bowl full of jelly. He was chubby and plump, a right jolly old elf, and I laughed when I saw him in spite of myself. A wink of his eye and a twist of his head soon gave me to know I had nothing to dread. He spoke not a word, but went straight to his work, and filled all the stockings, then turned with a jerk. And laying his finger aside of his nose, giving a nod, up the chimney he rose. He sprang to his sleigh, to his team gave a whistle, and away they all flew like the down of a thistle. But I heard him exclaim ere he drove out of sight,
Happy Christmas to all, and to all a good night.
I'm dreaming of a white Christmas, just like the ones I used to know, where the trees listen and children listen to the
$1.87. That was all. She had put it aside 1 cent and then another in her careful buying of meats and other foods. Della counted it 3 times. $1.87, and the next day would be Christmas. There was nothing to do but fall on the bed and cry. So, Della did.
While the lady of the home is slowly growing quieter, we can take a look at the home itself. Furnished rooms at a cost of $8 a week, there's little more to say about it. In the hall below was a letterbox, too small to hold a letter, and an electric bell, though it could not make a sound. And there is a name beside the door, Mr. James Dillingham Young. Now, when Mr. James Dillingham Young first got the name placed there, he was being paid only $30 a week. Now, when he was being paid only $20 a week, the name seemed too long and too important. It should perhaps have been Mr. James D. Young. However, when Mr. James Dillingham Young entered the furnished rooms, his name became very short indeed. Mrs. James Dillingham Young put her arms warmly about him and called her Jim. You've already met her. She is Della.
Della finished her crying and cleaned the marks of it from her face. She stood by the window and looked out with no interest. Tomorrow would be Christmas Day, and she had only $1.87 with which to buy Jim a gift. She had put aside as much as she could for months with this result. $20 a week is not much. Everything had cost more than she had expected. It always happened like that. Only $1.87 to buy a gift for Jim. Her Jim. She had had many happy hours planning something nice for him. Something almost good enough. Something nearly worth the honor of belonging to Jim.
Now there was a looking glass beside the window. Perhaps you've seen the type of looking glass that is placed in $8 furnished rooms. It was very narrow, and a person could see only a little of themselves at a time. However, if the person moved very quick and was very thin, you might be able to get a glimpse of themselves. And Della, being quite thin, had mastered this art.
Della stood before the glass. Her eyes were shining brightly, but her face had lost its color. Quickly she pulled down her hair and let it fall to its complete length. The James Dillingham Youngs were very proud of 2 things which they owned. One thing was Jim's gold watch. It had once belonged to his father, and, long ago, it had belonged to his father's father. The other thing was Della's hair.
If a queen had lived in the rooms near theirs, Della would have washed and dried her hair where the queen could see it. Della knew her hair was more beautiful than any queen's jewels and gifts. If a king had lived in the same house with all his riches, Jim would have looked at his watch every time they met. Jim knew that no king had anything so valuable. So now Della's beautiful hair fell about her, shining like a falling stream of brown water. It reached below her knee and almost made itself into a dress for her. Then she put it up on her head again, nervously and quickly. Once she stopped for a moment and stood still while a tear or 2 ran down her face.
Della put on her old brown coat. She put on her old brown hat. With the bright light still in her eyes, she moved quickly out the door and down the street. Where she stopped, the sign read, Mrs. Sofroni, hair articles of all kinds. Mrs. Sofroni, large, too white, cold-eyed, looked at her.
Will you buy my hair? I buy hair. Take your hat off and let me look at it.
Down fell the brown waterfall.
$20. Oh, give it to me quick.
Oh, and the next 2 hours seemed to fly. Della was going from one shop to another to find the perfect gift for Jim, and she had found it at last. It had surely been made for Jim and no one else. There was no other like it in any of the shops, and she had looked in every shop in the city. It was a gold watch chain, very simply made. Its value was in its rich and pure material. Because it was so plain and so simple, you knew that it was very valuable. All good things are like this. It was good enough for the watch.
As soon as she saw it, she knew that Jim must have it. It was like him. Quietness and value. Jim and the chain both had quietness and value. She paid $20 for it and rushed home with the chain and 87 cents. With that chain on his watch, Jim could look at his watch and learn the time anywhere he might be. Though the watch was so fine, it had never had a fine chain. He sometimes took it out and looked at it only when no one could see him do it. When Della arrived home, her mind quieted a little. She began to think more reasonably. She started to try to cover the sad marks of what she had done. Love and large-hearted giving, when added together, can leave deep marks. It is never easy to cover these marks, dear friends. Never easy.
After 40 minutes, Della's head looked a little bit better. With her short hair, Della looked wonderfully like a schoolboy. She stood before the looking glass for a long time.
Oh, if Jim doesn't kill me before he looks at me a second time, he'll say I look like a girl who sings and dances for money. But what could I do? Oh, what could I do with $1.87?
At 7, Jim's dinner was ready for him.
Jim was never late. Della held the watch chain in her hand and sat near the door where he always entered. Then she heard his step in the hall and her face lost color for a moment. She often said little prayers quietly about simple, everyday things.
Please, God, make him think I'm still pretty.
The door opened and Jim stepped in. He looked very thin and he was not smiling. Poor fellow, he was only 22 and with a family to take care of. He needed a new coat and he had nothing to cover his cold hands. Jim stopped inside the door. He was as quiet as a hunting dog when it is near a bird. His eyes looked strangely at Della, and there was an expression in them that she could not understand. It was not anger, nor surprise, nor anything she had been ready for. He simply looked at her with that strange expression on his face. Della went to him.
Oh, Jim, dear, don't look at me like that. I had my hair cut off and sold it. I couldn't live through Christmas without giving you a gift. My hair will grow again. You won't care, will you? My hair grows very fast. It's Christmas, Jim. Let's be happy. You don't know what a beautiful, nice gift I've got for you.
You've cut off your hair.
Jim seemed not to understand what had happened. He seemed not to feel sure he knew.
Cut it off and sold it. Don't you like me now? I'm me, Jim. I'm the same without my hair.
Jim looked around the room.
You say your hair is gone.
It's gone. Sold and gone, too. It's the night before Christmas, boy. Be good to me, because I sold it for you. Maybe the hairs of my head could have been counted, but no one could ever count my love for you. Shall we eat dinner, Jim?
For 10 seconds, let us look in another direction. $8 a week or $1 million a year, how different are they really? Someone may give you an answer, but it will be wrong. The Magi brought valuable gifts, but that was not among them. My meaning will be explained soon. From inside his pocket, Jim took something tied in paper and threw it upon the table.
I want you to understand me, Del. Nothing like a haircut could ever make me love you any less. But perhaps when you see these, you'll know what I felt when I came in.
White fingers pulled off the paper, and then a cry of joy, and then a change to tears. For there lay the combs that Della had seen in a shop window and had loved for a long time. Beautiful combs with jewels, perfect for beautiful hair. She had known they had cost too much for her to buy them. She had looked at them without the least hope of owning them, and now they were hers. But her hair was gone. But she held them to her heart, and at last was able to look up and say,
Oh, my hair grows so fast, Jim.
Jim had not yet seen his beautiful gift. She held it out to him in her open hand. The gold seemed to shine softly, as if with her own warm and loving spirit.
Isn't it perfect? I hunted all over town to find it. You'll have to look at your watch 100 times a day now. Give me your watch. I want to see how they look together.
Jim smiled.
Della, why don't we put our Christmas gifts away for now and keep them a while? They're too nice to use now. I sold the watch to get the money to buy the combs. And now I think we should have our dinner.
The Magi, as you know, were wise men, wonderfully wise men who brought gifts to the newborn Christ child. Being wise, their gifts were doubtless wise ones.
And here we have told you the story of two children who were not wise. Each sold the most valuable thing he owned in order to buy a gift for the other. But let me speak a last word to the wise of these days. Of all who give gifts, these two were the most wise. Of all who give and receive gifts, such as they are the most wise. Everywhere they are the wise ones. They are the Magi.
Oh, the weather outside is frightful, but the fire is so delightful. And since we've no place to go, let it snow, let it snow, let it snow. It doesn't show signs of stopping, and I brought some corn for popping. The lights are turned way down low. Let it snow, let it snow, let it snow. When we finally kiss goodnight, how I hate going out in the storm. But if you really hold me tight, all the way home I'll be warm. The fire is slowly dying, and my dear, we're still goodbying. But as long as you love me so, let it snow, let it snow, let it snow. Let it snow, let it snow, let it snow. I'm dreaming tonight of a place I love even more than I usually do. And although I know it's a long road back, I promise you I'll be home for Christmas. You can count on me. Please have snow and mistletoe and presents on the tree. Christmas Eve will find me where the love light gleams.
Merry Christmas, Uncle.
Bah humbug.
You don't mean that.
Bah humbug.
Uncle, you say that all the time. What does that even mean?
Nephew, you do Christmas your way, and I'll do it my way.
But you don't do Christmas in any way.
Good afternoon.
Oh well. Merry Christmas.
Bah humbug.
For the poor, for the poor.
Bah humbug.
But sir, it's Christmas.
Bah humbug. I'm going home.
Hey there.
Who are you and what do you want with me?
I'm Jacob Marley, your former business partner.
You can't be.
I am.
Well, I don't believe you, and I don't believe in ghosts.
Okay. How about this? Boo.
Ah, I believe you! I believe you! Wow. Why are you here?
I'm here to tell you that 3 spirits are going to come visit you.
Why?
I don't know. I'm just the messenger. Good luck with that.
Load of help you are! Ghosts. Bah. Humbug. Time for bed.
Boom!
Ah!
I've always wanted to do that.
Are you the spirit whose coming was foretold to me?
Yep.
Well, who are you and what do you want?
I'm the ghost of Christmas past. Come on, let's go on a little adventure. Oh, look. We're here.
Oh, why, I used to work here. And there's Mr. Fezziwig. He was my old boss. He was so kind and fun and happy.
So basically everything you aren't.
Humbug. Oh, wait. This is the night that Fezziwig closed the store early because it was Christmas Eve. Why, he tricked us into thinking we had to work late, but we had a party instead.
Did you have a good time?
Well, yes.
Were there snacks?
Yes.
Like good snacks or lame snacks, like when everyone just brings a bag of chips?
Oh, this place upsets me. Let us leave.
Sure, fine. Sleep.
Hey, wake up!
Oh,
Wake up,
not
wake up!
again.
I'm the ghost of Christmas present. Come with me. Come on.
What? Well, why are we at the Cratchit's house? Bob Cratchit is my employee at the counting house.
Watch and see.
Oh, I didn't know he had a young boy that needed help to walk. I didn't know he had 5 kids he needed to support. And in such a small house. Tell me, the little boy, the littlest, is he well?
He's very sickly. They call him Tiny Tim.
Oh, but they look so happy. And yet they have nothing.
Oh, really? Tell me more.
There is no reason they should be so happy while being so poor.
Huh. Well, that's one way to look at it, I guess.
Let us leave.
All right. Well, I sure hope the third ghost will get through to you. Sleep.
Ah! And you must be the third ghost then, huh? Do you speak? I guess not. Well, what do you want? Here? Is this good? What, over here? Is this fine? Oh, we're back at the Cratchits. I was already here. Oh, everyone looks so sad and Tiny Tim, where's Tim? I see his crutch, but I don't see him. Is he? Oh. Oh no. I can't bear it. What now? Why are we in a graveyard? Why is there a tombstone that has my name on it? Why is there nobody here? Nobody sad. Doesn't anybody care? Am I really that bad of a person? No, I can't be. I won't be. In fact, I will change. I'll go into town and buy the biggest turkey and give it to the Cratchits. I'll give Bob Cratchit a raise. I'll spend Christmas with my nephew and donate money to charity. Oh, Merry Christmas! Tiny Tim, you're alive!
God bless us, everyone.
Christmas songs you love to hear, thoughts of joy and hope and cheer, but mostly
shopping, shopping, shopping. Christmas, Christmas time is here. The sleigh bells and the red-nosed deer. Songs and songs we love to hear, all played 1,000 times each year. Heard this same song 20 times, and it's only Halloween. Joy to the world. Deck balls, girls and holly.
Christmas, Christmas time is here, and Christmas songs you love to hear.
Joy to the world. Shopping, shopping, shopping. Christmas season starting sooner every year. It's October. Stores with plastic Christmas trees. Ransack the mall. Shopping till you lose your mind. Spike the eggnog.
Sit back and watch Rudolph, Frosty, Tiny Tim, or Scrooge the Prince, or Charles the Brown. It's it's time to do Christmas. You can't get if you can't dance, so that's okay.
I'm not going to do that big bang.
All you need is a tree, some lights about 1,000 presents, wrap them up and pray for snow. Run to your closet, find your Christmas sweater, screaming carols all the way. La 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 la. All the way to California, it's the Christmas camp and Halloween to Christmas Day.
It's the most wonderful time of year. We're running mad with Christmas cheer.
Hey, what's troubling you, my friend?
It's not fair if you're Jewish.
Not fair if you're Jewish. Dreidel, dreidel, dreidel. I made it out of clay.
You realize that Christmas ain't the only holiday.
Oh, Piggy's right, who made these laws?
But wait, here comes Santa Claus. Santa Claus, Santa Claus, Santa Claus, Santa. Santa, 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 Santa.
I'm gonna go get some Chinese food.
La 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 la.
We should share this holiday. A happy Hanukkah to you. A happy Hanukkah to you.
Merry Christmas, Merry Kwanzaa. Christmas, Happy Hanukkah, and Merry Kwanzaa too.
Oh.
On Christmas Eve, many years ago, I lay quietly in my bed. I did not rustle the sheets. I breathed slowly and silently. I was listening for a sound a friend had told me I'd never hear, the ringing bells of Santa's sleigh.
There is no Santa.
My friend had insisted, but I knew she was wrong. Late that night, I did hear sounds, though not of ringing bells. From outside came the sounds of hissing steam and squeaking metal. I looked through my window and saw a train standing perfectly still in front of my house. It was wrapped in an apron of steam. Snowflakes fell lightly around it. A conductor stood at the open door of one of the cars. He took a large pocket watch from his vest, then looked up at my window. I put on my slippers and robe and tiptoed downstairs and out the door.
All aboard! Well, are you coming?
Where?
To the North Pole, of course. This is the Polar Express.
The train was filled with other children, all in their pajamas and nightgowns. We sang Christmas carols and ate candies with nougat centers as white as snow. We drank hot cocoa as thick and rich as melted chocolate bars. Outside, the lights of towns and villages flickered in the distance as the Polar Express raced northward. Soon, there were no more lights to be seen. We traveled through cold, dark forests where lean wolves roamed and white-tailed rabbits hid from our train as it thundered through the quiet wilderness. We climbed mountains so high it seemed as if we would scrape the moon. But the Polar Express never slowed down. Faster and faster we ran along, rolling over peaks and through valleys like a car on a roller coaster. The mountains turned to hills, the hills to snow-covered plains. We crossed a barren desert of ice, the Great Polar Ice Cap. Lights appeared in the distance. They looked like the lights of a strange ocean liner sailing on a frozen sea.
There is the North Pole.
The North Pole. It was a huge city standing alone at the top of the world, filled with factories where every Christmas toy was made. At first, we saw no elves.
They're gathering at the center of the city. That is where Santa will give the first gift of Christmas.
Who receives the first gift?
He'll choose one of you.
Look, the elves!
Outside, we saw hundreds of elves. As our train drew closer to the center of the North Pole, we slowed to a crawl, so crowded were the streets with Santa's helpers. When the Polar Express could go no further, we stopped and the conductor led us outside. We pressed through the crowd to the edge of a large open circle. In front of us stood Santa's sleigh. Across the circle, the elves moved apart and Santa Claus appeared. The elves cheered wildly. He marched over to us and pointed at me.
And why don't we have this fellow here?
He jumped into his sleigh, and I sat on Santa's knee.
Now, what would you like for Christmas?
I knew that I could have any gift I could imagine, but the thing I wanted most for Christmas was not inside Santa's giant bag. What I wanted more than anything was one silver bell from Santa's sleigh. When I asked, Santa smiled. Then he gave me a hug and told an elf to cut a bell from a reindeer's harness. The elf tossed it up to Santa. He stood, holding the bell high above him.
The first gift of Christmas.
A clock struck midnight as the elves roared their approval. Santa handed the bell to me, and I put it in my bathrobe pocket. The conductor helped me down from the sleigh. Santa shouted out the reindeers' names and cracked his whip. His team charged forward and climbed into the air. Santa circled once above us, then disappeared into the cold, dark polar sky. As soon as we were back inside the Polar Express, the other children asked to see the bell. I reached into my pocket, but the only thing I felt was a hole. I had lost the silver bell from Santa Claus's sleigh.
Let's hurry outside and look for it!
But the train gave a sudden lurch and started moving. We were on our way home. It broke my heart to lose the bell. When the train reached my house, I sadly left the other children. I stood at my doorway and waved goodbye. The conductor said something from the moving train, but I couldn't hear him.
What?
Merry Christmas.
The Polar Express let out a loud blast from its whistle and sped away. On Christmas morning, my little sister Sarah and I opened our presents. When it looked as if everything had been unwrapped, Sarah found one last small box behind the tree. It had my name on it. Inside was the silver bell. There was a note.
Found this on the seat of my sleigh. Fix that hole in your pocket. Signed, Mr. C.
I shook the bell. It made the most beautiful sound my sister and I had ever heard.
Oh, that's too bad. It's broken.
When I'd shaken the bell, my parents had not heard a sound. At one time, most of my friends could hear the bell, but as years passed, it fell silent for all of them. Even Sarah found one Christmas that she could no longer hear its sweet sound. Though I've grown old, the bell still rings for me, as it does for all of those who truly believe.
Every Who down in Whoville liked Christmas a lot, but the Grinch, who lived just north of Whoville, did not. The Grinch hated Christmas, the whole Christmas season. Now, please don't ask why. No one quite knows the reason.
It could be his head wasn't screwed on just right. It could be, perhaps, that his shoes were too tight. But I think the most likely reason of all may have been that his heart was 2 sizes too small.
Whatever the reason, his heart or his shoes, he stood there on Christmas Eve hating the Whos, staring down from his cave with a sour, grinchy frown at the warm-lighted windows below in their town. For he knew every Who down in Whoville beneath was busy now hanging mistletoe wreath.
And they're hanging their stockings.
He snarled with a sneer.
Tomorrow is Christmas. It's practically here.
Then he growled with his Grinch fingers nervously drumming.
I must find some way to stop Christmas from coming.
For tomorrow, he knew, all the Who girls and boys would wake bright and early. They'd rush for their toys.
And then, oh, the noise, the one thing he hated, the noise. Noise, noise, noise.
Then the Whos, young and old, would sit down and feast. And they'd feast, and they'd feast, and they'd feast.
Feast, feast, feast.
They would feast on Who pudding, in a rare Who roast feast, which was something the Grinch couldn't stand in the least.
And then they'd do something he liked least of all. Every Who down in Whoville, the tall and the small, would stand close together with Christmas bells ringing. They'd stand hand in hand, and the Whos would start singing. They'd sing, and they'd sing, and they'd sing.
Sing, sing, sing.
And the more the Grinch thought of this Who Christmas sing, the more the Grinch thought,
I must stop this whole thing. Why, for 53 years I've put up with it now. I must stop this Christmas from coming. But how?
Then he got an idea, an awful idea. The Grinch got a wonderful, awful idea.
I know just what I'll do.
The Grinch laughed in his throat, and he made a quick Santa Claus hat and a coat. And he chuckled and clucked.
What a great Grinchy trick. With this coat and this hat, I look just like Saint Nick. All I need is a reindeer.
The Grinch looked around, but since reindeer were scarce, there were none to be found. Did that stop the Grinch? No, the Grinch simply said,
If I can't find a reindeer, I'll make one instead.
So he called his dog Max, and he took some red thread, and he tied a big horn to the top of his head. Then he loaded some bags and some old empty sacks on a ramshackle sleigh and hitched up old Max.
Then the Grinch said,
Giddy up!
And the sleigh started down, toward the homes where the Whos lay a snooze in their town. All their windows were dark, quiet snow filled the air. All the Whos were all dreaming sweet dreams without care, when he came to the first little house on the square.
This is stop number 1,
the old Grinchy Claus hissed, and he climbed to the roof, empty bags in his fist.
Then he slid down the chimney, a rather tight pinch, But if Santa could do it, then so could the Grinch. He got stuck only once, for a moment or two. Then he stuck his head out, the fireplace flew, where the little Who stockings all hung in a row.
These stockings,
he grinned,
are the first things to go.
Then he slithered and slunk, with a smile most unpleasant, around the whole room, and he took every present. Popguns and bicycles, roller skates, drums, checkerboards, tricycle, popcorn, and plums. And he stuffed them in bags, and then the Grinch, very nimbly, stuffed the bags one by one up the chimney.
Then he slunk to the icebox. He took the Who's feast. He took the Who pudding. He took the roast beast. He cleaned out that icebox as quick as a flash. Why, that Grinch even took their last can of Who hash. Then he stuffed all the food up the chimney with glee.
And now,
grinned the Grinch,
I will stuff up the tree.
And the Grinch grabbed the tree, and he started to shove, when he heard a small sound like the coo of a dove. He turned around fast, and he saw a small Who, little Cindy Lou Who was not more than 2. This Grinch had been caught by the tiny Who daughter, who'd got out of bed for a cup of cold water. She stared at the Grinch and said,
Santa Claus, why? Why are you taking our Christmas tree? Why?
But, you know, that old Grinch was so smart and so slick. He thought up a lie, and he thought it up quick.
Why, my sweet little tot,
the fake Santa Claus lied.
There's a light on this tree that won't light on one side, so I'm taking it home to my workshop, my dear. I'll fix it up there, and I'll bring it back here.
And the fib fooled the child. Then he patted her head, and he got her a drink and sent her to bed. And when Cindy Lou Who went to bed with her cup, he went to the chimney and stuffed the tree up.
Then the last thing he took was the log for their fire. Then he went up the chimney himself, the old liar. On their walls he left nothing but hooks and some wire. And the one speck of food that he left in the house was a crumb that was even too small for a mouse.
Then he did the same thing to the other Who's houses, leaving crumbs much too small for the other Who's mouses. It was 15:15 dawn, all the Who is still abed, all the Who is still a snooze when he packed it up his sled. Packed it up with their presents, the ribbons, the wrappings, the tags and the tinsel, the trimmings, the trappings.
3,000 feet up the side of Mount Crumpet, he rode with his load to the tip-top to dump it.
Pooh, pooh to the Who's,
he was Grinchiously humming.
Right about now, they're finding no Christmas is coming. They're waking up now, I know just what they'll do. Their mouths will hang open a moment or two. Then the Who's down in Whoville will all cry boo-hoo. That's a noise,
grinned the Grinch,
that I simply must hear.
So he paused, and the Grinch put his hand to his ear.
And he did hear a sound rising over the snow. It started in low, then it started to grow. But the sound wasn't sad. Why, this sound sounded merry. It couldn't be so, but it was merry. Very. He stared down at Whoville. The Grinch popped his eyes. Then he shook. What he saw was a shocking surprise.
Every Who down in Whoville, the tall and the small, was singing without any presents at all. He hadn't stopped Christmas from coming, it came. Somehow or other, it came just the same. And the Grinch, with his Grinch feet ice cold in the snow, stood puzzling and puzzling.
How could it be so? It came without ribbons, it came without tags, it came without packages, boxes, or bags.
And he puzzled 3 hours till his puzzler was sore. And then the Grinch thought of something that he hadn't before.
Maybe Christmas,
he thought,
doesn't come from a store. Maybe Christmas perhaps means a little bit more.
And what happened then? Well, in Whoville they say that the Grinch's small heart grew 3 sizes that day. And the minute his heart didn't feel quite so tight, he whizzed with his load through the bright morning light. And he brought back the toys and the food for the feast. And he himself, the Grinch, carved the roast beast.